Hi there, and welcome back. This is RYYZN Community Arts Winter Programming, and today we're back for the second video in our series of 3 videos with Jan Jenkins. Hi, Jan, welcome back. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Wonderful to be here.
Last video, we did a little bit of doodling in black and white ink and got started with our doodles. So what are we going to be doing for this video?
For this video, I'm going to show you some different options for coloring your Zen doodle. That's if you would like to color it. And just to show you a quick difference, black and white is beautiful, but you take the same piece of art and you color it and you've got a whole different baby. So I'm showing you how to use watercolors and I'm showing you how to use markers, and I'm giving you some recommendations as to what I think you might want to play around with from a budget-friendly perspective.
That sounds awesome. Well, let's get started.
This is set 2 of the Meditative Meanderings videos. I wanted to show you how to color your artwork after you've finished penning it in on your page. One of the things I do is I carry a journal around with me with some pages in it wherever I go, and that way I've got something to play around with if I'm waiting in the car for somebody, or if I'm just somewhere where I need some quiet time and would like to do a little bit of artwork. And you can see here, this one's not finished. I've slowly been picking away at this one during our travels. So that one is in progress. And some of these have been to check and see how different mediums would work to color your pen and inks. So I just thought I'd show you that. I'm going to also explain that depending on what you're using to color your paper, it's either light fast, which means it won't change color, or sometimes things change color over time. So I'm going to give you some options here and explain or recommend what's probably the most reasonable price to use for coloring in your artwork after the fact, okay? So it can be as easy as using these pencil crayons. I will mention to you, pencil crayons are wax-based. If you do color your artwork in, do not use your pens over top of the pencil crayon. It will ruin your pen. So if you are going to use the waxy pencil crayons, just be mindful of that. I haven't checked to see if it would clog the brush tip, but usually if you go back over, you want to be doing something finer. Here you can use pencil crayon to color in different areas, and you can actually mix colors on top of each other if you want. For example, if I want to make this more green, I can blend that and end up with a bluey green. So that is one option, is to use pencil crayons. Now my favorite kind of pencil crayons is Eagle brand Prismacolor. They are just so nice and smooth and really lay down really nice rich color, as you can see from what I'm doing here. Okay, so that's pencil crayons. The next thing that you can use are these alcohol ink markers. There's 2 brands, Prismacolor or there's Copic. These are fairly expensive. You're talking about $9 a pen for this. And then the Prismacolors, they're a little cheaper because they're not refillable. So these products, they're an option. I will tell you they're not light fast. I have original artwork I've done in the Prismacolor and they turn out beautiful and vibrant, but they do change over time. So I've been unable to sell the originals. I just scan them and create limited edition prints from them. These might reactivate your pen if you haven't used the Faber-Castell India Ink Permanent Artist pens. So it might reactivate. The other thing is you have to work quickly if you don't want to have it dry streaky. So that these pens actually have a broad tip and they have the narrow tip, which gives you a bit more control. That's how those work. The Copic ones actually have a wedge and they have a brush tip. And the brush tip is what I use for detail work. You just have to make sure that you don't leave it resting on the page too long, otherwise your color will keep blooming into the rest of your page and it might go over the borders that you're trying to do with it. Both these products are quite nice, but they're also quite pricey. So I thought we would talk about some other options instead of those. The next thing is you can get Neocolor. They're like a crayon, but they're water-soluble watercolors. And so these work really nicely in doing coloring. However, you can't get a fine tip on these. So what you do with these is you lay down your color, and you can actually use more than one color. You can actually blend two colors here like this. You just have to be careful what two colors you blend, otherwise you might end up with something muddy. And then what you do is you take a wet brush and you activate the color that way. Now when you're working wet like this, you'll notice that the paper starts to buckle. And you have to be careful, because if you went and did this next area without this being dry, you'd end up with a commingling of the paint, and it might not be an effect that you're really wanting to have. I'll give you an example of that just so you can see. So if I take this like that, and then I wet my brush, and I play around with the paint here, as long as I'm very careful and don't get it close to this, then I'm okay. But as soon as I start having these two wet areas connect, then they'll start bleeding into each other. So those are the Caran d'Ache Neocolor 2, and they are water soluble color crayons. I don't know if you can see this, but you'll see that the paper is buckling. And because I'm using photocopy paper, I'm very, very gentle in how I apply the color, because if I'm using too stiff a bristle brush, it'll actually shred the paper, which is why it's nice to use artist quality paper that's more durable, because then if you want to, you can play around. But I find the nicest color effects are when you just lay the color down and then don't play with it too much, because you'll end up with it going all muddy and rough looking. Okay, so the next thing that you can get is PreColor Soft, and they're exactly like a color pencil, but they're filled with dried watercolors. So that's what these look like. And it's always a good idea to do a little test chart of your colors, because that way you can see what they look like dry and wet. And so with these, again, you can mix the colors together if you want. You can use them just singly if you want. So if I wanted to color this in, I can use that. And then if I wanted it to be a little bit pinkier, I can use my pink and I can color it in this way. And so these you can actually use almost like the crayons, or the color pencils rather, but you can also wet them as well. I'll just show you what that looks like. And again, I'm just using a bit of water, and I'm going to wet that, and you can see how it ends up going quite vibrant there. Okay. All right. That's the Artist Aquarelle watercolor pencils. Okay. Now these products can be a little pricey, but the great thing about using these last two products I just showed is they never dry out. You can leave them in your cupboard for years and they'll be just as good as when you left them in there. So they never go bad. The other thing that I recommend that you could try, if that's not budget friendly for you, is a Yarka watercolor set. They're like $10. And the watercolors in here, they're called semi-moist, so they always stay wet. When you're trying to reactivate them, you don't have to worry about them wearing on your brush because they stay semi-moist. So that's a nice thing to have. And all these colors and this tray actually slips out, so you can wash this separately. And you can actually replenish this tray with additional watercolors, or you can just go buy another one, right? So you can also use the tray if you've used up all the watercolors and gone and bought yourself another one of these. You can use the tray for acrylic inks. I'll talk about those in a second. I just wanted to show you, I'll just bring this over, the watercolors. And I've kind of mixed up a couple of colors here. Now watercolors always dry lighter than what they look when you're putting them on the paper, just so you know. Keep that in mind. You can also go over and do more than one layer. You just have to be very gentle, otherwise you'll reactivate the other layer. Okay, and we're going to do a little bit of this lovely blue here. Okay, and we'll do that one there. And again, if you just leave that dry, you end up with some really nice edges. If you're working wet on wet, you could end up putting a blob of another color in and it kind of spreads around a little bit. That's kind of neat as well, if you can see that. The nice thing about watercolors is the fact that when the pan of watercolors dries back up again, you just go in and add some water and mix it up. If you're going to seal it up, I would suggest you be using distilled water, otherwise you might end up with a bit of fungus growth. So make sure your paints are dry before you stash them away in an airtight place if you've been using regular tap water. Okay, so the last way I wanted to show you is you can use acrylic inks. I'm not going to demonstrate acrylic inks. They don't reactivate. These are lovely as well. These are Liquitex acrylic inks. You can get them in a metallic finish or just a regular finish, or you can get the Daler-Rowney FW inks. And again, you can play around with mixing your colors. You can see what they look like dry. Acrylics tend to dry darker than when they're wet. Watercolors dry lighter than when they're wet. So I just wanted to show you, just so you can see the overall effect. This was an artwork I did using the alcohol ink markers, using these. And like I said, you get a beautiful, lovely, vibrant color effect. However, the colors will change over time, and you have to be prepared for that. The next thing is showing you using the inks. So this was done using these acrylic inks. Over top of it, I also did some gel pen work. And these are gel pens here. These gel pens, they actually are not permanent. They will reactivate if you get them wet. You can get them in metallic, you can get them in white and different colors. And I really like the white for embellishing my artwork where it's been colored in darker, and then I go over top with the white. So just to show you here, the jelly pens, they actually feel quite nice and juicy and they work really, really well. However, like I said, once you put them on there, if you try to put anything on top, it will reactivate the pen, so it's not permanent, and you have to use it as your final embellishment if you're going to use them. The next thing I wanted to show you is this one. I did this one with acrylic inks, which you mix with water just like you do with watercolor. These little jars can run about $6-7. However, a little drop of ink with some water goes a long, long, long way. Okay. So that's the colored ones that I wanted to show you. The next step is going to be showing you how to pre-color your paper. You could pre-color using watercolors. You could pre-color using watered down acrylic inks. In this instance, I thought let's try playing around with tea bags and loose tea. Okay, so that's our next session. We're going to pre-color our paper and come up with something that looks totally different and quite organic compared to something that's very controlled and defined like this particular one. Okay, thank you.
Well, that was really cool. Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Jan.
Oh, you're welcome. I hope you and everyone else who's seen this enjoys it and gives it a try. Remember, we all start somewhere, and the more practice you do and the more you enjoy it, the more refined your motor skills will get, and you're just going to have a great time. And it's just such a relaxing, meditative way to let yourself meander.
Absolutely. So, Jan, before we hit the road, why don't you tell us a little bit about where the participants or the viewers can find you on the social medias, or if there's a website that we can contact you on?
Sure. There are links to my social media pages on the front page of my website, www.riverwestartworks.com, or I welcome you to email me, and my email address is jan@riverwestartworks.com. So have fun, enjoy, and have a great day.
And thank you, Jan. And as always, you can reach us at RYYZN Community Arts on Instagram and Facebook. You can also email us at ryzyzncommunityarts@gmail.com. So thank you so much again for joining us, Jan. I hope you have a really great day.
Thanks, Ty. You take care.